The ripple effect. It takes only one action to start a ripple. But that ripple can have a lasting impact on so many. For one Columbus man, that ripple started when he was a teenager, when he learned he had a rare form of bone cancer.
Up until a certain point, I didn't really think of it as somebody donated it to me, you know. Now I appreciate, you know, what I've been given. And
when her kidneys were failing, she could have given up hope. Now she's a happy and healthy teenager, thanks to the ripple created by her organ donor.
Like when I'm at dance, it makes me so happy because I can feel like she's dancing with me, like we're dancing together, and it's really exciting.
She's a wife and mother living in Central Ohio, but her story could have been much different if not for the ultimate gift.
If it wasn't for an organ donor, I wouldn't even be here. My son wouldn't be here, all these things. So if somebody hadn't said yes, I wouldn't be here.
And even the smallest ripples can make a difference. We'll share with you the story of how one young child gave new life to another young boy.
A lot of people don't realize it because it doesn't immediately touch a lot of people's lives until it does.
Welcome to a special presentation from Lifeline of Ohio that we're calling The Ripple Effect. Hello, I'm Angela Pace. In the next 30 minutes, we will share with you 4 powerful stories that demonstrate the change you can make in someone's life by saying yes to organ, eye, and tissue donation. We begin our journey with one of those rare stories that can truly only be described as a miracle. A young woman in desperate need of a liver transplant, and a young man who had succumbed to injuries from a car accident. An encounter by 2 women in a prayer group would bring all these people together. Some might call it chance, others might call it divine intervention. Husband and wife, mother and son. Watching a happy and healthy Morgan Mercy at home, it's clear her family is a perfect match. But it may not have been possible had it not been for another perfect match.
She was actually 4.5 the first time she was hospitalized, and she was at Children's. That's when they told us what she had, the alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, and they told us that she would need a transplant, and for days and months I couldn't even say the word transplant.
Even after being diagnosed with the rare genetic disorder affecting her liver, Morgan says her health never stopped her from doing the things kids do.
I had a very normal childhood. I did have to go to have checkups 2 times a year, always knowing that in the back of my head that the only cure for what I did have was a transplant eventually.
It wasn't until her senior year of high school that Morgan's health took a turn for the worse.
I was able to go my freshman year to Marshall University, and when I was there, I deteriorated more, and my Thanksgiving break is when I came here to Columbus and did my days of testing.
Those tests were necessary to get her on the transplant list, but her deteriorating health would force Morgan to put her college career on hold. And that's when the power of prayer took over.
Sunday morning, my mom had got a phone call from it used to be my 4th grade teacher, calling and asking what my blood type was. At church that day, Mrs. Walker went to the front of the church to pray for me, and then Liz went to the front of the church to pray for her cousin's son who was in a tragic car accident that weekend.
The young man in that car accident was Jordan Ayers, a teenager from Northern Ohio. His second cousin, Liz Ayers-Thorin, was the other woman praying that day with Karen Walker.
I just felt like we had to do something, so I called my friend Karen and asked what was it that Morgan had needed, and she told me that she needed a liver, and she asked me why, and I told her that Jordan had been pronounced brain dead, and I didn't know if organ donation was even in the picture at that time.
In a heroic act and unknown to his family, Jordan had decided to become an organ donor. Liz says it's just another example of the type of person Jordan was.
His parents were surprised. They had no idea. When he got his license, he registered to be a donor. And it's just so him, because he was a helper to those in need, truly. And he took care of people.
Prayer had brought Jordan and Morgan together, and Jordan's family would ensure that connection would last forever. His father's words to Liz:
"It's a perfect match. It's a perfect match, and we're going to get Jordan's liver to your friend."
They knew nothing about me, nothing at all, and they did a direct donation to me without knowing me.
And did you think about Jordan?
All the time. Yeah.
What were you thinking?
How this whole thing happened sometimes, what he looked like, but when I saw his picture for the first time, it was like I knew him.
After a successful surgery, Morgan went back to school, eventually graduating from Ohio University. It was there she learned the skills she uses today as a certified recreational therapist at Ohio State. She also married her husband, honoring Jordan throughout her special day.
On my bouquet, I had a locket with his initials and his picture on it, so he was with me the whole time.
And your son's name is?
Graham Jordan. Yep.
That's the ultimate tribute, isn't it? What a powerful example of the ripple effect when Jordan said yes to organ, eye, and tissue donation. Morgan has gone on to enrich so many other lives through her work as a therapist, as well as her role as a wife and mother. What a great way to honor her hero, Jordan. We want to bring you another perspective now, the perspective of a donor's family. Dealing with the loss of a child is the hardest thing any parent would ever have to deal with. For Joe and Suzanne Kubu of Asheville, the death of their 7-month-old baby was met with complete shock and devastation. But in the initial hours of their grief, Joe and Suzanne made a singular decision, the decision to donate their young son's organs, and the ripple effect would take over from there.
One of my favorite things that I'll share, when he would get to that point where he was calming down and I was holding him on my chest, he would tuck his little head right under my chin. And that was one of my absolute favorite things. He was a good kid.
Joe and Suzanne Kubu fondly remember their first child, Jack. Born in November of 2014, the smiling baby boy was the perfect addition to their new family. But sadly, their time together would be over too soon. Just 7 months after his birth, baby Jack passed away. You, in your grief, decide that you are going to make him a donor, an organ donor. How tough was that decision for you?
There really wasn't much of a decision to be made. We knew it was the right thing to do, and it was his way to leave a legacy and to save others. You know, it ended up being another little boy. And that, in and of itself, is special because we're going to see this other child who's essentially the same age as our son grow up. To know that it's because of Jack, that's very special.
That child whose life was saved, a young boy named Lyndon, the recipient of Jack's liver.
It was Jack's way to leave a legacy of himself and to continue on and, you know, to do something that may be greater than the rest of us ever get a chance to do.
After reaching out to the family and with the help of Lifeline of Ohio, the families were able to meet face to face.
It was emotional, but exciting to meet Lyndon and his family and get to know them and go through that process.
We learned that Jack was actually his second donor. The first liver that Lyndon received, he almost immediately went into rejection, and Jack was able to help him and saved him, and everything's been good since.
Since Jack's passing, the Kubus have welcomed 2 more children into their lives, Jack's younger brother, Elliot, and his baby sister, Hannah. Joe and Suzanne say the 2 will know about their big brother.
We already take Elliot out to the cemetery to hang out with Big Brother occasionally. We take cupcakes and balloons out for a birthday. They'll know about him.
We show him pictures and videos, and we tell him that's Jack. And working on saying Jack right now.
Knowing their son gave the ultimate gift, their message to anyone considering organ and tissue donation is simple.
There's no more noble way to honor your child than through organ donation. It's a gift that not everybody can give or is able to give, and to save another human's life, another person's life, to extend someone's life, I can't think of a more noble cause.
Always in their hearts and minds, one of the ways that Jack is honored is at the annual Lifeline of Ohio Dash for Donation. Joe and Suzanne organized a team they named Jack's Pack. And at the 2017 Dash for Donation, also present was the little boy who was saved by Jack's gift. Lyndon and his family joined the Kubus in Jack's Pack. Joining us now is Andrew Mullins, who is Lifeline of Ohio's Director of Partner Services. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us to help to answer some of the questions about this very important topic. Now, we have seen two very powerful stories from two very different perspectives, and they emphasize the importance of the work that you do at Lifeline of Ohio.
Our hardworking, dedicated team works around the clock to facilitate the gift of life, sight, and healing for organ, eye, and tissue donation.
So explain exactly what Lifeline of Ohio's role is in the donation process.
We provide donation services to 76 hospitals throughout our service area here in Ohio, as well as West Virginia, in order to facilitate the organ, eye, and tissue donation process.
That's a lot of heavy lifting you guys are doing there.
Takes a team.
Well, we're all about busting the myths about organ, eye, and tissue donation. There are a lot of myths out there. Now, one of the reasons that people give for not registering is, I'm too old or I'm too sick.
We hear that frequently, and we always say, register to become an organ, eye, and tissue donor, and then at the time of your death, medical professionals will do a thorough evaluation to determine what is able to be used for donation and transplant.
And then another myth is that one's sexual orientation will keep them from being an organ, eye, and tissue donor. That's a pretty outdated myth, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Very historic myth, and we just ask that if you want to become an organ, eye, and tissue donor, register today to do so and let that evaluation take place later.
Leave it up to the medical professionals then.
Leave it up to the team.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Now, we've already heard a lot of reasons for becoming a registered organ, eye, and tissue donor if you're not already. Now there are two ways that you can register. The first is by registering in person at any Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles location. And you can also register online by visiting lifelineofohio.org. Once there, look for the register link at the very top of the website. When you click on that link, you'll be redirected to the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles website. Be sure to have your driver's license or state ID handy to sign in. And once you're logged in, you'll answer a couple of questions, then you'll be all set. Now, if you have any questions, you can always call Lifeline of Ohio during normal business hours. Their toll-free hotline number is 1-800-525-5667. We want to share another powerful testimony about the ripple effect. It's the story of a teenage girl, her love of dance, and a kidney donor who would allow her to dance again. Damia Williams is many things: a daughter, a sister, a dancer, even a poet. But on February 9th, 2015, life as she knew it changed.
On February 9th, my life changed forever. I used to be what some people call a regular teenage girl, but now I'm a warrior, a fighter, a survivor. 5%. 5% is a number that runs through my head hundreds, maybe even thousands of times a day. The number that my kidneys were functioning on February 9th.
Diagnosed with kidney failure, Damia was told by doctors that she would eventually need a new kidney. For her mother, Dee, there were only two things to do after getting that news.
Breathe. Breathe and pray. I don't really know how to explain it, but I just prayed, and there was a peace that came over me, and I start, make this phone call, get these people praying, because we didn't know really what to expect other than to get to the hospital for monitoring.
What would follow were months of waiting for a kidney, and in the meantime, Damia's focus turned from dancing to dialysis.
It was hard because I am a teenager, so I like to go out and hang out with my friends, be at the mall, but can't do that because I had to get like set up on dialysis at a certain time so I could get off, so I could be at school at a certain time. So it was kind of like a lot of ritual, like schedule, routine. So if I like broke that routine, that was like big no-no, like we have to be on time.
After more than a year of receiving treatment, her family's prayers were answered. You get word that there's a donor, and what was that like?
It was really exciting because it wasn't 3, 4, 5 years, it was 18 months. So for that, I was like really grateful it like came sooner than expected.
Just a few weeks after a successful transplant, Tamia was back to feeling like her old self. A few months later, she learned of the amazing connection she shared with her donor.
My donor's mom has told me just all about her family, and it's just really cool to know, like she was a dancer too. She started dancing when she was 3 as well. And so like when I'm at dance, it makes me so happy because I can feel like I'm dancing, like she's dancing with me, like we're dancing together, and it's really exciting.
Doctors called Tamia's donor a perfect match. She now has a perfect dance partner by her side for the rest of her life.
It is a life-changing thing. You are giving another person life. And that's what I would want to say to our donor. You gave my daughter life. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
I know that God has a purpose and a plan for my life. 5% and I'm still here. On February 9th, my life changed forever.
From one dancer to another, Tamia's donor said yes to donation, and today, Tamia is thriving. The ripple continues. Tamia has such a bright future, and we can't wait to see what else she accomplishes in her young life. So here's another fact for you. Kidneys are the #1 needed organ in the Black community. In fact, African Americans are disproportionately affected by illnesses that can lead to the need for kidney transplants. But Andrew, race plays no role when it comes to the donor-recipient match.
It does not play any role when it comes to matching between donor and recipient. Basically, it's on blood type and size, and sometimes the location and the distance between the recipient and the donor comes into play from a timing.
But race has nothing to do with it at all.
Race, sex has nothing to do with any of this.
Now, another myth that we hear, people say, well, I don't want to be a donor because I want open casket viewing at my funeral.
If you can have an open casket viewing prior to organ, eye, and tissue recovery taking place, then you can have the same afterwards. Donation has no general alteration or disfigurement of the deceased that would keep that from being able to occur.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. Now, some people may use the "it's against my religious beliefs" as a reason not to register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. We took that excuse to a leader in the religious community here in Columbus, Pastor Victor Davis of Trinity Baptist Church, to get his take on it. Located in the historic Near East Side of Columbus, Trinity Baptist Church is built on the principles of helping the community through outreach.
We believe that we're not doing ministry unless we are touching those outside of the walls of the church.
As part of that outreach, the subject of organ, eye, and tissue donation doesn't come up as often as Pastor Davis would like, but it is something he's working to change.
It just can't be preaching organ donation, it has to be teaching organ donation. We have a responsibility to give life to the lifeless, and a way to do that is through organ donation.
So what about the idea that organ, eye, and tissue donation is against one's religion? Pastor Davis says that shouldn't be an excuse.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, if anything, the Bible supports it, because Jesus says, I come that you have life and you might have life more abundantly. I lay down my life that you might have life. Everywhere that Jesus talks, he talks about giving of himself.
And our thanks to Pastor Davis for his input there. We've heard a few stories about the power of organ transplantation, but what about tissue transplantation? It's much more common than you would think. Donated tissue is used in everything from saving burn victims to repairing torn ligaments and tendons to helping people with bone or joint diseases to restoring sight. Tissue transplantation can even prevent the need for amputation. as was the case for the man in our next story. For stay-at-home dad Matt Aerosmith, much of his day is spent chasing after his young daughter Nora. Keeping up is easy now, but his story could have been much different.
That's for Nora.
Growing up, Matt was like most teenagers. He was active in sports, playing everything from baseball and basketball to running cross country. But when the pain in his left knee wouldn't go away, a visit to his doctor would change his life forever.
My cross country coach told me that she thought it was just growing pains. So I kind of, ignored it for probably about 6 months to a year. And at night I would have really bad pain in my knee. My pediatrician took another x-ray, and that's when they found the tumor.
At just 15, Matt was diagnosed with chondrosarcoma, a rare type of bone cancer. It would mean the end of his athletic career.
It was tough. It was tough. I watched all my friends, still playing sports.
The pain of watching from the sidelines would subside, and thankfully for Matt, good news was on the way. Though his cancer could not be treated with chemotherapy or radiation, it was contained inside his femur. It was also a blessing to have been discovered as late as it was.
The doctor told me that if I had been diagnosed 6 months to a year earlier, they would have had to amputate. But there was a brand new procedure where they could use donor bone.
After almost a year with his new hardware, Matt was walking on his own again. But recovery wouldn't be without setbacks. He would suffer through additional surgeries, even receiving a second bone transplant. Through it all, he knows he wouldn't be the same without his donors.
Up until a certain point, I didn't really think of it as somebody donated it to me, And that's, that's kind of sad, but that was my naivety at the time. And, now I appreciate, what I've been given and that I need to live life and fully and appreciate it.
Something else Matt is thankful for, the support of his wife, who he says has been there for much of his journey, and 2 healthy legs to keep up with his growing daughter. Matt has some limitations as to how he can move or how much he can lift, but he has proudly competed in several of the recent transplant games. He even has the medals to prove it. He's participated in poker, bowling, darts, and golf. Way to go, Matt. Andrew Mullins, Lifeline of Ohio's Director of Partner Services, joins us again. And Andrew, tissue donation does not have the wide exposure that organ donation does, but actually more people who are watching today are going to be affected by that than organ transplantation.
Absolutely. There's over 1 million tissue transplants being done throughout the United States every single year. And I guarantee if an individual hasn't been impacted by receiving a tissue transplant today, that if they ask around, they have friends, family, and others that have received a tissue transplant. It's very regular.
Now, we have heard of some types of tissues that can be donated, but give us some more examples.
So there's bones that can be recovered for transplant, and that can restore movement in a leg where there's been some sort of trauma or damage. There's skin that can be donated for someone that has bad burns, including for our armed force members that are coming back from war, to help them. There's the corneas that can be recovered for restoring sight in 2 different individuals. Heart valves, typically in a small child, a baby that might need a heart valve transplant to save their life. Tendons to help with movement from a sports injury, to help someone be able to run again that maybe they weren't able to do so in the past. So many, many different uses.
So many ways that people can be healed when one person says yes.
Yes, it's all about the yes.
All about the yes. Well, one alarming statistic is that here in Ohio, every 48 hours, 1 person dies waiting for an organ transplant. And nationally, 20 people die every day while on the list. But one myth that goes along with that fact is that important people or famous people can skip right to the top of the list ahead of other people who are waiting for a transplant. Andrew, please tell me that that is not true.
It's absolutely not true. No one, regardless of their fame or fortune or anything, is going to jump ahead of the list. The thing that comes to mind is you hear about the celebrities when they need a transplant, but you don't hear about the normal individual around town when they need a transplant very often. So that's why I think that myth, resonates in people's minds from time to time.
All right, very true.
Yes.
Another fear that some people have is that if they are registered as a donor and they get into a serious accident, the doctors in the emergency room won't do everything they can to save their life. That somehow the ER doctors are just waiting for registered donors to pass away so their organs can be given to someone else. Another false myth. For some perspective, we visited the ER and Trauma Center at Grant Medical Center to speak with trauma surgeon Dr. Keshav Deshpande.
My number one priority is to take care of that patient, do any life-saving interventions to help save that patient's life.
As every physician does, Dr. Keshav Deshpande took an oath to do whatever he can to keep his patients alive. And yet for some, the belief persists that emergency room and trauma doctors are simply standing by, waiting to claim healthy organs the second a patient is admitted. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, doctors don't even know which patients are donors.
While the clerical workers of the hospital are taking in that information, we're busy on the other side trying to take care of the patient. So it doesn't even cross my mind if they're a donor or not. My priority is to take care of that patient.
Dr. Deshpande says the organ donation conversation doesn't even begin until a patient has been pronounced brain dead, but never before that.
Brain death is one of those diagnoses that is clearly defined and has very specific criteria that need to be met. Once that diagnosis is made, we make the referral to Lifeline of Ohio or any other organ procurement facility and have them come evaluate the patient. And based on their evaluation, they can make the recommendation that this is a good candidate for organ donation or not.
One of the takeaways from this story is the importance of talking to your family about your decision to become a registered organ, eye, and tissue donor.
Yes, after someone registers their decision to become a donor, we encourage everyone to talk to their families about it so that it doesn't come to a surprise at the time of the individual's death.
Make sure everybody's looped in.
Make sure everyone
right?
knows, yes.
Now, one final takeaway, the power we all have to create that ripple effect begins when we say yes to organ, eye, and tissue donation.
It all starts with the yes. By one person saying yes, they have the potential to save the lives of 8 different individuals through organ donation, enhance the lives of more than 50 individuals through tissue donation, and restore sight in 2 different individuals through cornea donation.
And those are remarkable numbers.
Yes.
This is why you should register. And here's a quick reminder on how you can register. You can do it in person at any Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles location. And even easier, you can register right now by visiting lifelineofohio.org. Once there, find the register link at the very top of the page. You'll be redirected to the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles website where you will log on and enroll. It's that easy. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us to answer all these questions. It's been very helpful.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Angela Pace. For everyone at 10 TV and Lifeline of Ohio, thank you for watching.